prepared a PowerPoint, but thank you very much. I feel honored to be given this chance. My name is Katharina, as been said. I'm originally from Switzerland, but I've been living in Bangladesh for 24 years, the last 24 years. So from the great nation of Bangladesh, on the other side of India, very populous nation, and you called it poor, and I disagree. It's actually rich. It's rich in people and also rich in the promise of God, which of course applies to every nation, so also to Malawi. So what I would like us to do is just start with one Bible verse and just try to understand how it is important, okay? So this will be very, very simple. All right, so the Bible verse I want to start with is actually in the Ten Commandments. You all know it. It's thou shalt not steal. Thou shalt not steal. So now what we're going to do, we're going to take this law and ask a few questions with it. So the first question to ask is always, well, what is God commanding? Now, in this case, this is pretty simple, okay? Thou shalt not steal. But the second question is a little bit more difficult, and that's the question, why did God forbid stealing? And typically we answer, because it's sin. Yeah, but why is it sin? Well, because it's bad. Well, how is it bad? Okay, so that's what we're trying to understand. And in order to understand this better, it's good to ask some sub-questions like, what benefits are there if people obey this? Meaning if there is less stealing. Or negatively, what happens if there is a lot of stealing? Or to ask a little bit differently, what is God trying to protect with this law? What is he trying to give us? And what's the character of God behind a law like this? Okay, so that's going to be our question. And now what we're going to do is we are just going to try to think through this law and its implication for life, for economy, for countries. So again, we'll start very simple. Let's say you have a stealing, meaning you have an owner, right? The guy from whom something was stolen. Then you have a thief, the one who took it. And then, of course, you have everybody else. So people who might hear about this. Okay, so we're going to go one by one and think about these things. So the first one would be the owner. So let's say you were the one that it was stolen from. Now, this could be a small thing, let's say a mobile phone or something like that. Or it could be a big thing, like your land has been stolen or something, somebody's encroaching on your lands and you cannot get your rights back over the land, a very common problem in Bangladesh. So small or big, let's say you're the owner. Now, if you're the owner and somebody's stealing from you, what effect does this have? Well, again, very simple. The first effect is you're losing something. So you have an economic loss. But not only that, let's say a mobile gets stolen. See, what you lose is not just the price of the mobile. You lose the phone numbers, you lose the pictures of your child, you lose the, whatever, the photos of documents, whatever it is far more that you lose than just the actual value. But not only that, it is, how do you feel? Well, it's very, very frustrating. It kills your time. You have to replace it. It's annoying. It's discouraging. Okay. What else we could say? Still talking about the owner. And I want to give a little Bangladesh example here. In Bangladesh, when we go to church, you leave your church at the doorstep of the church, you leave your shoes. So then you go in barefoot. This is a sign of respect for the house of God. So after the church service, you come back out and you're trying to find your shoes. And it sometimes happens that your shoes are gone because somebody else took them. So now what's going through your head? Well, you're thinking, somebody took my shoes. Well, then I have to take somebody's shoes. Now, of course, this is not right and it's not good, but see, here's an effect of stealing. See, did you come to church to steal? And the answer is no, you didn't come to church to steal. So why then suddenly this temptation to steal? Well, because you were stolen from. Otherwise, you might not have thought of this. Okay, and many more things could be said, but let's leave that for a moment. So the owner clearly has a loss. But how about the thief? And you could say, well, the owner has a loss, the thief has a gain. So what's the big deal? And actually, there are people who argue that economically this makes no difference. One has a loss, the other one has a gain. For the economy of the country, no difference. Now, that is a misunderstanding in many ways. It's simply not true. First of all, you all know that stolen goods have to be sold more cheaply. You can never get the original price, not to speak of the addresses and the phone numbers and the documents and the photos, which of course the thief will delete. But even if we say, okay, the thief has a slight economic gain, okay, fair enough. But really, a lot of negative as well. It could be a loss of reputation if this gets known. He is now in conflict with the law. Maybe his conscience is biting him. Maybe he's past that. He doesn't care anymore. But the most important thing about this is, see, now you have come into conflict with the law, and that makes you more vulnerable. And also, it makes you more likely to steal again, of course, because once you got something nice like this, the temptation to steal again has gone up the. And so, did you notice this? If they're stealing, the temptation to steal has gone up for the owner, but also for the thief. But not only that, you get yourself used to maybe luxurious items. Once you have a smartphone, who wants to live without one? So let's say in a year or two when this phone will break, what will you do? You get yourself expensive habits maybe that you cannot really afford. All of this pushes you into further crime. And of course, stealing is an entry-level crime, but often it doesn't stay there. In Bangladesh, if you go to the slums and you ask the gang leaders what was their first crime, it is usually stealing. So it's an entry-level crime and it may stay there, but it may not. But also it makes you vulnerable. So for instance, in the slums of Bangladesh, one way that the gang leaders are actually recruiting new boys is they involve them in small thieving, and then they threaten them and say, if you don't do this as well, I will hand you over. So you make yourself vulnerable to threats like this. And this is the pathway into crime in many of the slums of Bangladesh. So, and more things could be said, but clearly the thief has some advantage, but a lot of disadvantage even on his side. And of course, most thieving is not actually caught, but still it has a lot of negative effect, even if it never gets prosecuted or punished. Okay, but that is actually not the thing that spoke to me most about this. What really got me was to think not about the owner and not about the thief, but to think about everybody else. Okay, so these are people who did not steal. They were not the ones stolen from, but they might hear about this. Now think about what this does to them. See, basically, where there is stealing, it creates an atmosphere of mistrust, an atmosphere of frustration. And one more thing, you will have to now take care of your things more carefully. So, for instance, what a level of stealing creates is it creates the need for protective measures. So in Bangladesh, every house has grills in the window. I mean, I can show you this. You look out the window, here you have the grills. Why? Because there is stealing. You have boundary walls. Why? Because you have to protect your property. You have gates, you have guards, or you have, CC camera nowadays, whatever the methodology is. But all of these things, actually now, everybody has to do. And of course, it doesn't take much mathematics to figure out that it is far more expensive to build a house with all the security measures than without. Now, you can say, the security measures, do they help the owner of the house? No, he has to pay for them. Does it help the thief? No, he can't get in. So it's a lose-lose. And of course, there's the guy who did the grill, but really, he could have probably used his iron for something more intelligent than this. And of course, the guard might be a faithful guard, but really, if all the guards in Bangladesh would be involved in productive labor, it would surely be better. So in Bangladesh, you have to basically sit on everything just so it doesn't disappear, which is very frustrating. And also, it kills money, it kills time, it kills resources, it kills your nerves. But that is still not the most important thing. What I would like to do, if you don't mind, is share a little story which for me was sort of like the beginning of understanding this at all. So where I live in Dhaka, in the capital of Bangladesh, we live on a little road, and nearby there are living places where people live, and then there are clothes garments factories on the other side. So every morning, hundreds and hundreds of people walk through this road one way, girls mostly, and then in the evening, hundreds and hundreds of girls walk back. Now, we used to have outside of our gate a henna tree, a henna bush. And I don't know about Africa, but you know, in the Indian subcontinent, henna is very, very popular with the girls. You need it to have shiny hair and nicely done nails, and you do your patterns, and it's a big fashion thing. So now what happens? So we have all these thousands of girls walking by every day. What happens is this tree never has a leaf on it because the girls are all stealing the leaves, yeah, to get their henna. Now you can say, okay, whatever. Now I don't care about henna, but my friend with whom I lived, she really wanted some henna and she got frustrated. But being a good NGO worker, what she did is she had an idea. Okay, I will take from this henna tree, make little saplings, little trees. And then each time I catch a thief, she would catch the thief, girls, all of them, and say, look, you shouldn't steal. But I will give you here your own little henna bush, and you plant it, you have your own henna, and you don't have to steal anymore. Which is very sweet, except that all the girls gave her the same answer. They said, oh, sister, this will never work. So she asked why. And all the girls, in so many words, gave the same answer. What they were saying is, well, if I plant it, everybody will steal my henna. And of course, we had a good laugh about this, but listen to what she is saying. See, why does she not want to plant? Because if she plants, she won't get the fruit of it. So if she doesn't get the fruit of it, then why do it? Now, think about this on a bigger perspective. See, this is a negative cycle. Where there is much stealing, there is no protection of property. If there's no protection, then why should I plant, create, put my labor, my intelligence into this? Why? Well, if there's no fruit, or if I'm not going to get the fruit, then why should I do it? But then, because they're stealing, people don't want to plant. Because they don't plant, there's actually, of course, less produced. Well, because there's less produced, fewer things are available. Fewer things available means higher prices. It means less affordability. And basically, you put yourself on a negative spiral. So I'll restate this because I think it's very important. So theft, where there is stealing, there is a discouragement of labor, discouragement of planting, discouragement of initiative. Why? Because you will not see the fruit of it. And if you do not do it, you have less production, you have less availability, and you have put yourself on a negative track. Now, in the positive, it also works. See, where there is security of assets or of things, there it pays off to do something. So you may plant, you may create, you may do something, but because why would you do that? Why would you put in the labor and the effort? Well, because you're going to get something from it. So where there's less stealing, there is more incentive to work and to do things, which means far more is being produced, which means things are far more available. And basically, you put yourself on an upward spiral in the same way as stealing will put you in a negative spiral. Now, let me just illustrate this in one or two more ways. So, for instance, in Bangladesh, we have the big cities, the mega cities, and slums. And of course, slums, you know how they look, very little space. But if you think about it, see how much space do you really need for a papaya tree? Do we to 2 foot by 2 foot, something like that? It's really not that much. So even in a slum, you could easily have papaya trees. You could put the spinach up on your roof. You could put a yam into your ditch, but nobody does it. Why? Because you know you're never gonna see the fruit of it. So what's the result of this? Even in places, even very densely populated places, you could easily have 400, 600 papaya trees, but we have zero. Why zero? Well, because it doesn't pay off. And Bangladesh is one of the most fertile countries in the world. Everything grows, and I mean quick. We have crops of potatoes in 40 days. We have fruit trees all over the place, but many places fruit trees are not planted. Why? Because everybody steals it. I know of families who are considering to cut down absolutely good fruit trees out of utter frustration that they never ever saw a single fruit. So what happens is we are in a country where you have 1 kg mangoes, high quality mangoes, but what do? You eat them green. Why? Because if you wait, somebody else will have stolen them. And then in the end, instead of kg mangoes, you eat small mangoes. And instead of getting vitamin A, you eat it in a different form. And then in the end, you have vitamin A deficiency in a country where your kg mangoes would fall from the sky. This is an economic disaster. Okay, or many more things could be said. So we eat unripe fruit, we don't get the vitamins, we eat it while it's still small, all because of theft. All of this are economic negatives or nonsenses, if you want to say so. Let me say one more example. In Bangladesh, often the rice farmers, rice being the main staple and main crop, when the rice gets ripe, they actually sleep out in the fields to protect their crops. Now, this should not be so. Already they've done backbreaking labor all day, and now at night they can't even properly sleep because people will get into their crops to take them. So very negative things. Now, there is positive as well, and I do want to share a little thing of the Swiss tradition that's actually still happening. So in Switzerland, often when farmers produce fruit, let's say they produced apples, they will actually put the apples out near a road in little boxes, and they'll put up a table, a sign, a money bag, a wallet, and they'll say, okay, 1 kg of apple costs so much money, and then they will leave the place. People will walk by. If they like the fruit, if they think the price is good, they deposit the money there and they take the fruit. Now, if I tell this story to the Bangladeshis, they just laugh. And they say to me, oh, no apples, no table, no sign, no money back. Okay, it's all gone. Now, but see, what is the advantage of this system? Well, the farmer has both sold produce and he had time to go and do labor in his fields. So economically, this is a huge difference. So you don't have to protect everything. You don't have to sit on everything. You don't have to have a guard and a watcher at all moments in all places. So, and let me do a further illustration with this. See, often when we hear thou shalt not steal, we think it's negative, meaning God doesn't want us to have. And sometimes we feel like this. I'll try to illustrate this. Let's say we have here a nice little shiny, whatever, valuable thing. So we feel that God says, see this good thing, it's not for you. So we look at God as the God who doesn't want us to have, which is why he forbids us to steal. But that is a total misunderstanding of God. First of all, that's not his character, of course. But even in this case, look at this. See, what is God trying to do? And the answer is he's trying to protect the labor and the property of people so that they won't lose things, so that they would work, so that their labor would be bearing fruit for them and that it would help them. And here's another thing. So you can see God is, some people say this, God is for the rich, he's against the poor, which is why he forbids stealing. But that again is totally wrong thinking. Think about it. See, the rich people, they can afford building the boundary wall. They can afford making sure that their stuff is not being stolen. But who is it that can't afford the safety measures? And the answer is the poor. So, when God says, Thou shalt not steal, he is trying to protect the property and the labor and the effort of the normal people and of the poor. Now, okay, are you with me so far? I hope I'm not getting feedback, so I'll just continue. Okay, now let's keep thinking about this. All right, so thou shalt not steal. If we say this in other words, basically we say God has given us a right to our property. Thou shalt not steal is a protection of property. So then there is a God given right to own property. And again, this is not us, this is God who gives it to us. It's also a God given responsibility. I am responsible to make sure that your property is safeguarded. Okay, and actually, the law goes further than just saying don't steal. The law says if you see somebody else's animal, you must take it in and feed it till he claims it. So it's even more proactive. So even if it's at a cost to you, you must protect each other's property. Okay, now where does this come from? And the answer is the foundation of this is actually on the first page of the Bible. See, in Genesis 1, God, having made the world, he basically gives it to man. To man to fill it, to work it, to take charge of it, to look after it. So what we see is that humans from the very start are given property to look after, things to look after. So basically you could say God, who is the creator, is the ultimate owner, but what he does is he gives to humans. So basically God makes you an owner. God makes you a steward. God makes you into a person with leadership. So I like the way you introduced the institute, making us kings and queens. God has made us kings and queens, and he has given us the world. So if you want to say so, taking care of property is the first job description that there ever was. Okay, it's a foundational thing. Adam and Eve together are made into people who have ownership and have authority, and yes, with it comes accountability. So fill the earth, take charge of it, look after the garden, till and keep it. This is chapter 2, verse 15. Okay, now why would God want to be, right? What is he trying to teach us through ownership? And again, I think practical things teach us very well. See, if you own things, you learn how to take care of them. You learn how to properly use them, otherwise they'll be destroyed very quickly. You learn that you need to fix them in time. As the British say so nicely, no? A stitch in time saves nine. Yeah. So yes, you learn these things. Also, you learn the value of things because you are taking care of it, you bought it, you know its value, you're putting it to proper use. So basically, ownership is sort of like an absolute 0-1 training in faithfulness, in being responsible, in stewardship, and frankly, in leadership. See, if you can't even take care of your clothes, how can you take care of humans? Humans are far more valuable, far more important than clothes. So basically, ownership, even of simple things, is a 0-1 training for greater things. So ownership is sort of like a baseline for leadership. Now, some people object to this teaching and they say, well, isn't this just selfishness? No, I have a right to my stuff and you don't have a right to my stuff. So is this not just feeding selfishness in people? But you have to be careful. Ah, see, so God commands us to be generous. So that is a very true statement. So let's be generous. But what can we be generous with? And the answer is with things we truly own. See, if I don't own, I can't give. So ownership is the basis of generosity. Ownership, if I do not own, I have no authority to give. So God safeguards to own, and then he empowers us to be able to give and contribute. So you can call it selfish if you want, but you have to be careful. Never be more spiritual than God, okay? Sometimes we want to be very spiritual. Don't be more spiritual than God. He has told us that private property, is important. Now, let me suggest go a slightly different direction with them. With this, I will quickly read from a passage in Proverbs. This is Proverbs 27, from 23 to the end. And what it says is, so Proverbs 27, 23 onward. Know well the condition of your flocks and give attention to your herds, for riches do not last forever. When the grass will appear, the lambs will provide your clothing, the goats the price for a field. There will be enough goat's milk for your food, for the food of your household, and nourishment for your workers. Okay, so this is a very interesting little agricultural passage in Proverbs. Now, what do we take from this? Know well the condition of your flocks. Be attentive to your labor and your assets. Okay, give attention to your herds. Riches do not last forever. So even if you have property, this is not a reason to stop working. It is a reason to become a better steward still. Then it's long-term thinking, it's planning, it's reinvestment. The goats will give me milk. The sheep will give me clothing. If I sell the goats, I might buy land. If I have land, I can have more goats. So it's the idea of reinvestment, thinking long-term, foregoing eating everything now to create a better future. It's an upward development. And I suggest to you that there is no such thing as development without ownership. See, if you don't own, why should you save? If your property is not safe, why would you keep it for tomorrow? It is better to eat it all now. Okay, so if there's no safety of property, you cannot think long term. It's not possible. And I would like to illustrate this again with a Bangladesh example. There was an NGO that here in the capital, Dhaka city, they did a project which was very fascinating to me. So they did a project for street children. So what did they do is they gave every street child a metal locker. So a little space which they could lock and only they could access. So basically what they gave them was a safe little space. Now these are all street children that have pretty much nothing. Do you know what happened with these lockers? Day after day after day, the lockers started filling up. And a few weeks into this, the lockers were full. Why were the lockers full? Because now the child knows whatever I sell on the streets during the day, if I don't eat it all, I can put it in my locker and I can start with that capital again the next day. Before the lockers, they would not keep it because you know whatever a street child gains during the day, it loses during the night because there's always some guy more powerful than him or her. So a very fascinating project in my mind, which shows that if there's safety of property, people will develop, and they will do this even without teaching or with little help or support. Now, talking about increase, it is actually interesting that God in the Bible demands increase. Okay, so fill the earth, so it's for humans, but it is also basically whatever comes into your hands should increase in quality, in size, in quantity. And of course, in New Testament language, this would be the parable, famous parable of the talents, right? Somebody's given 5 talents, somebody's given 2 talents, somebody's given 1 talent. And again, the basic point is it doesn't matter what you were given. The question is, are you working with what you have? So God demands increase. Are you a good steward? If I give something into your hands, does the quality increase or decrease? Is it more efficient once you are done with it? Is it in better shape? Is it more beautiful than when you started with it? Are you a good steward? Are you a developer? See, God is the owner. He makes us owners. God is authority. He gives us authority. Okay? God is creative. He makes us creative. All right? So let's be good stewards. God has made us stewards. Of course, here, what comes to mind is the very famous scripture, um, those who are faithful over little will be faithful over much. Okay, and I do want to I want us to think about this for a moment. See, nowadays we are very, very much impressed with the what I call the quick rich schemes. Now, it's the dot-com euphoria, or the pyramid schemes, whatever it is. We are enamored with quick rich, and I really don't see that in the Bible. I do not think quick rich is blessed. Let me quote from Proverbs. This is Proverbs 13:11. It says, wealth hastily gotten will dwindle, but those who gather little by little will increase it. I'll read it again. Wealth hastily gotten will dwindle, but those who gather little by little will increase it. So clearly, God's way is not the quick, dum. His way is the slow, the labor, the faithfulness, learning your ropes, taking care of things, being faithful with what you have, being given more. That is his way to do it. Now, and again, you could find many illustrations. For instance, one thing we do is many nations, they play lottery. And I don't know whether this is very famous in Malawi, but many countries, basically everybody buys a ticket, and then one guy wins, and the guy who wins the big prize, he gets the million. And it's really actually quite stupid. We make everybody more poor and make one guy more rich. No? So what's the point? But anyway, we play this as a game. But actually, they did a study on the people who won the big prize, meaning the jackpot, the big amount of money. And they watched this over time. So these were guys that maybe weren't very rich before, and now suddenly, they have become these millionaires. Okay, so he's gone up. Now what's going to happen? And the answer is, it's going to go down. And they did a study after 5 years, after 10 years, latest after 15 years, every single one of the main winners were poorer than when they got the prize. Are, how is this possible? And the answer is because quick rich doesn't work. It doesn't work. We don't have the skill for it. We don't have the management for it. We don't have the character and the self-control for it. So what does God want? God wants slow increase, faithfulness, understanding, management skills, wisdom, and self-control. This should grow. And he wants this to grow not only in your life, but over generations in your family. In Proverbs 13:22, it says, the good will leave an inheritance to their children. Meaning, what you have gained, you will hand over to your child, but not just the assets, but also the wisdom, the self-control, the management. That is what's supposed to be growing. And this is how poverty also is fought, is by multi-generational slow increase. Also a warning with wanting too much. Luke 12:48 says, for everyone to whom much has been given, much will be required. And I always shudder when I read the scripture because of my own country, Switzerland. See, we want stuff, but we don't want responsibility. Okay, we want wealth, but we don't want to steward it well. With God, ownership means stewardship. Stewardship means responsibility. Responsibility means accountability. It never is separate with God. Okay. All right. Now we can go many more ways with this. Let me just bring up another topic for you to think about. And that is the topic of boundaries. See, private property basically says, this is mine and this is not mine, and I need to know what is mine and what is not mine. Now, some people, again, are very spiritual and they say, oh, we should not need boundaries. And the answer is no, we do. We need boundaries in all areas. We need boundaries in relationships. I need to know who my husband is and who is not. I need to know who my child is because I have a higher level of responsibility for my child than I have for any child. Now, this doesn't mean I have zero responsibility for other people's children, but I do have a higher responsibility for my own. But it also is in things of property, as we just read. Okay, do not steal, or very famous Deuteronomy 19:14, do not move your neighbor's boundary marker, meaning do not steal land, do not encroach on your neighbor's foundation for wealth and possibilities. But also politically, we need boundaries. Boundaries teach us what is ours and what isn't, how far I have a right, how far I don't, how far I am responsible and how far I'm not. See, if I don't know what I own, if I don't know what's under my care, how can I be responsible? Because I have no idea what's mine and what's not mine. Okay, so, and therefore in the Bible, you will find great importance on boundaries, whether they're relational, economic, political, whatever it is. There is such a thing as boundaries because I need to know where my right starts, where it ends, what I'm responsible for, and what not. And of course, also, we could for a second think there has been political systems which have denied people the right to private ownership. Of course, most famously, this would be communism. Communism has not private property, but collective property. And the idea is that all the land belongs to everybody, which actually means all the land belongs to the government, which actually means all the land belongs to very few people, those who are powerful in the government. So the theory is nicer than the reality. But within 4 years of Lenin implementing a communist government in Russia, making it the Soviet Union, within 4 years, the country had come down into actual starvation. Why? And the answer is because it's one thing to say, oh, let's redistribute, let's take from the poor, let's give to the rich. While it is easier to redistribute, it is harder to produce. So if you do not have a basic idea which encourages productivity, which protects people's labor and property, you will not have development, and soon there will be nothing to distribute. And of course, socialism has done this through the taxing system, where basically, you know, the more productive a person is, the more entrepreneurial they are, the higher their taxes are. And this can take very funny forms. In Sweden, there are people who pay 90% of income right into the taxes. It can even occasionally go over 100%. But basically, what your signal to your people then is, basically you say, you're stupid because you work. Because if you realize that with all the work you do, you own so much, and if you don't work, you own so much, well, then people don't work. Why would you? And what this has produced is great welfare states. And of course, you all know that one of the chief reasons the Western countries, even affluent countries, are in horrendous debt is welfare. It's one of the reasons, military being the other big one, but welfare is a huge reason. So basically, we're spending money we don't have. We're spending money of our children. Not good. So there are sort of indirect or special ways of stealing. And of course, this is where corruption comes in, which is our other topic. And I know I have not spent much time on this yet. But think about this, corruption is it's like a lid. Now, let me say, Bangladesh has had the dubious honor of being 5 years in a row declared the most corrupt nation in the world. Okay, so the title now passed on to I don't know who, but you know, we're up there somewhere. Corruption is like a big heavy lid that frustrates and stifles initiative from the bottom. And this is why we must hate it and never practice it, because it discourages the normal person. It discourages the entrepreneur. It discourages the people who are trying to make a living, who are exercising their skill and are trying to come up. And it is like this lid that pushes everything down. But there are other ways. Again, I do not know how this is in Malawi, but personal debt is a huge problem in Bangladesh. And a lot of it, sadly, is consumer loans, meaning buy now, pay later sort of things. So I delay the thing I can't afford now. I'm basically saying, oh, I will be able to afford this in the future, which of course is a joke. The prices are going up. Why would you afford it more in the future? And of course, you end up paying 50% more, double even, for these things. Financing, consumer loans, whatever it is. Another huge factor in poverty in Bangladesh is no boundaries within extended families. And again, this is a huge topic. I'm just mentioning it here as a thing to think about. See, if in a greater family, nobody can say no, then you have financial claims on people continuously. And this is a reality in Bangladesh. You can't say no, so you end up paying for the operation of your uncle, and you can't send your child to school anymore. So there is a constant tension between who pays for what. And what tends to happen is that those who are faithful and work hard and try to limit themselves and live within a budget, those end up paying for all the people somewhere in the family who are indulgent and who couldn't care less. So no boundaries in extended families creates this, what we call in German, we call them bottomless barrels, meaning these are buckets without a bottom. And of course, as long as money is coming from somewhere, then why should I change? Okay, but there are other things. Of course, polygamy is a huge factor in poverty, because you have multiple children and usually none of them actually ends up doing well in school or anything else. But I do want to add here one more thing, which I think is absolutely essential, and that is the issue of who owns the land, the actual ground. And I do not know what all of your roles are in Malawi, but we always must work that the land will be owned by as many people as possible. Basically, the measure of private land ownership correlates with the stability of a country and also with economic development. So you do not want land to be in the hands of the powerful few. The more it is in private hands, normal families, everybody's hands, the better your country will do. And actually, owning land in general is a huge issue in the Bible. And again, it's something I've never heard preaching on, but it is actually unbelievably big in the Bible, is how to take care of land. And I do want to say this because I believe that in Africa, the slavery has basically made a wrong connection between two things. Basically, work was what the slaves did. Now, that was for Africa, I think, as if I understand this right. In the subcontinent, Indian subcontinent, the issue has been caste. So you have castes which cannot be broken. And then some castes do the dirty work and others do not do the dirty work. And these things are still in place. So don't fool yourself by thinking that this has gone away. It has not gone away. Now, why am I mentioning this? Because see, if God says that property is important, he says that labor is important. That means that the laborer is important. So we have associated work with low class behavior. Now that is a disaster, and that is so not what the Bible is saying. In the Bible, work is not what the slave does, work is what the heir does, work is what the steward does. So Adam is made a steward, a king, if you want to call it that, a leader, and a worker, because of course the monkey is not going to till your field. It is you who will till your field. And also Adam, of course, and Eve together are commanded to do so. So work is what creates property. If property is valuable, work is valuable. So if we look down on work and even, and I mean physical work, we have not understood God. And I'm sorry to be as blunt as that, okay? God values work. God values the worker. Everybody in the Bible works. Jesus had a practical profession. He says about the Father, no? The Father is working always. Work came before the fall. Adam and Eve were told to work before sin ever was an issue. So if work was part of the perfect world, then I dare to say that work will be part of heaven. And of course, we think of heaven as the great retirement village, no? Where you finally can put your feet up on the table. Now, it is true that through sin, work has become more problematic and more tiresome and less fruitful. That is true. But work itself is a godly thing. Okay? And of course, corruption discourages labor, it discourages the laborer. And it discourages people from doing what they're really supposed to be doing. So work is dignity in the Bible. Work is what the priest does. Work is what the farmer does. There is no distinction. There's only one word in Hebrew. So what the priest does is work. What the farmer does is work. Work is power to contribute. Work is to create the needed, the useful, and the beautiful. Work is dignity, it's satisfaction, and it is calling. And it is the power to contribute, it's the power to give. Okay? So God wants you to be powerful. He in Ephesians he says, let the thief learn how to work so he is able to give to those in need. Thessalonians says, anyone not willing to work should not eat. And of course, the protection of the laborer is a huge topic in the law. You have weekly holidays. Do not keep the wages of a laborer until morning, meaning you cannot delay salary payments. The safety of the worker on the job is protected in Deuteronomy 22. Okay, so if we understand God's heart, then we know that our labor produces property, which is our power to be positive and contributing people in our societies. And this is why corruption is such a discouragement thing. It's the great anti-developing agent. It is the lid that keeps everything down. It frustrates and it discourages, and we have to hate it. Now, having lived in a country with a lot of corruption, let me say that there is a total prohibition in the Bible on taking bribes. Total prohibition. What is a bit less clear is what to do when you can't get the government to do what the government's supposed to do. So that's a little bit a different case. So bribes, taking bribes is absolutely outlawed. Giving bribes is totally outlawed if you are trying to buy the bribe, get done a thing which is illegal. Then it's also totally outlawed. The case of a government who is owing you a function and is refusing a function even though you are paying for it, I mean fees, and you're meeting all the conditions and you're giving it the time it needs, that is a bit more difficult case. And I think there are discussions or disagreements exactly as to what is said about that. So, whoa, I think we're almost at the end of my teaching time. So, what do you want? You know, what do you want? And I suggest, you know, what's going to be written on your tombstone? And my suggestion is this: we need to work for the protection of the rights of the normal people, or the poor in especially. So if on your tombstone it says, he helped the poor, this is a good last word on you. We need to work for the rights of normal people. We need to value agriculture and the whole farming thing. The next time you eat food, you say to God, thank you for the land that you have given us, and thank you for the farmer who produced this for us. Okay, if we do not understand the importance of the normal people, we will not be able to develop. And we have a tendency to look to the rich and say, oh, they are the problem. And I mean, maybe they are, but you will not develop your country by looking to the rich. You need to protect the rights of the poor. You need to make sure the labor of the poor is encouraged and is not stifled by injustice, stifled by things like corruption. In Proverbs, it says, the field of the poor yields much fruit or harvest, but injustice sweeps it all away. God hates frustration because he's the God of hope. So whatever binds people back, whatever makes people small, is not of him. So what he wants is, he wants us to make us people who are powerful, powerful to do, powerful to work, powerful to give, powerful to contribute. And I think this is the mandate he has given us. Okay, so what I have shared with you is absolute basics, and I know that. Okay, so I apologize for that. It's absolutely basic, but I do believe that it has the power to build up, and building up is what God has told us to do. The other day I stumbled across a scripture which I thought was so powerful for Bangladesh, where God says, in this land I will bless you. Okay, so in your land he will bless you. Don't run anywhere else. We need to seek the welfare of our countries. In this land he will bless you. Amen. Okay, I'm handing back to Marcos. Hello.
Microphone.
Thank you very much, Katharina. It was so good to hear from you. And I mean, this was just one law of the 100th law of the Bible. And you see, she could, with one law, she could speak 1 hour, and you can think about that she can speak 1 hour with every law from the Bible. But thank you very much. It was so great to hear from you. And I think that this is really a foundation for bringing prosperity to a nation, if we understand that. Thank you so much, Katharina. We appreciate you.
Thank you.